Hello and welcome back. Today we will be reacting to the Richmond, North of Richmond, a new song by Oliver Anthony. This song is kind of made a breakout sort of thing. This guy is not signed by any sort of record deals, and it's a sort of everyman's anthem. He reportedly turned down a massive record deal, and it is being wildly, I think it's going to be interesting to talk about for a couple of reasons. One, political polarization. This song is being received wildly well on the right, and on the left there are people accusing him of dog whistling, and to a larger extent, or like kind of an extension of that of anti-Semitism. Now, I haven't done any sort of dive on the anti-Semitism. We're going to be keeping it to this sort of song just on itself, and so I'm not going to have too much to say about that, but we will talk about potential dog whistling in the song. And I think that this polarization is going to be an interesting topic to talk about, because I think polarization is a problem, and I think that, even if someone's not the same side as you, you should be trying to have a good faith interpretation of what they're doing, and I think that the left makes this sort of dog whistling claim a little bit too aggressively, even though I identify as left-leaning. Now, also, this is largely a song about sort of class, because he makes complaints about, the kind of this upper ruling class quite a bit, and this is also going to be another, kind of topic that flows throughout the entire song. Now, for a little bit of context on me, I identify as a left-leaning libertarian, which means that I think that the government should be minimally involved, and also that people should generally be allowed to do what they want to do, but through the lens of just generally leaning a little bit more on the left. However, I think a lot of libertarians wouldn't have me, because I think that the government fails to regulate companies properly. I believe in competition, but I think that the competition includes that laborers have an ability to organize, and that companies don't get monopolistic power. And I think that these two things are not necessarily the case in the United States, so laborers not being able to have enough leverage to negotiate wages leads to wages being lower than they should, and companies having, oligopic or monopolistic power leads to dead weight loss to society. To this end, I also identify as a capitalist and a Marxist, which sounds like a contradiction, but really it's just that I think capitalism is the best way of organizing economy, but I think some of Marx's critiques of capitalism are correct. That's quite a bit to unpack, but I generally think that the critiques that capitalism fails to be meritocratic at times, those are the ones that resonate with me, not sort of appeals to empathy. And so this is kind of where I come from in terms of the background, and these will be relevant ideas as we get into this song. Alright, let's jump in.
I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay.
So this is the first point. He's not getting paid a fair wage, and I think that there's kind of two graphs to look at here that kind of inform or kind of give a good idea. The first is that worker productivity has been going up since the 50s in a pretty linear way, but there was this break in the 70s where compensation no longer really follows it. I have another chart here that targets I looked for real median income. I couldn't find the graph I was looking for, but this one kind of gives a similar idea, which is the share of aggregate income held by the USA middle class, and it's saying that it has plunged. It used to be 62% of aggregate income, and I believe this does not include capital gains income, but it might. I'm not exactly sure. And you see this middle class is just dropping off, and the lower income is dropping off. And this kind of leads into what I'm saying, with, I think it's fair that the people who have more merit get paid more, but if this trends towards 100%, right, for the upper income, that's a problem in my eyes. And I don't think it's necessarily the case that the middle income their labor is worth less, or the lower income is worth less, but perhaps the case that they have more difficulties having leverage and ability to negotiate because they do not have the same sort of resources that corporations have. Now, I'm going to have a kind of more anti-corporatist lens, and then Oliver Anthony here is going to have more of an anti-political lens. Let's continue.
So I can sit out here and waste my life away, drag back home and drown my troubles away. It's a damn shame.
I'm generally not a fan of country music, but I do kind of think this beat slaps.
What the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you.
Now, I think that some people might think that people like me, people like you, is a dog whistle for regarding race, but I don't see it that way. I think he's talking about class all throughout, and he seems to primarily be talking about class. He's talking about class immediately preceding this. He's talking about wages, and so people like me and people like you seems to, in my eyes, apply to, you know, a sort of class struggle, not a sort of racial or other type of struggle.
I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is. Living in the new world with an old soul.
So this new world with an old soul type thing might be another example of what people on the left are thinking of as dog whistling. I don't think that this is necessarily like the biggest dog whistle, and this is sort of goes in line with, I've seen this narrative where MAGA is like inherently racist, and this sort of argument, and the argument goes a little bit like this: make America great again, and then they say, hey, but you know, when exactly was America great for black people? And because America was never great for black people, it's this sort of, or back when it might have been great, it was in the 50s before civil rights and this sort of thing, and because of this, it's like this racial thing. But I think it's like, I think that this is not a good faith interpretation of MAGA, although I don't identify with anyone. I don't identify with that like overall philosophy that's like umbrellaed under MAGA, but just the statement, make America great again, and his statement, you know, young person with an old soul, you know, I think the 70s were pretty nice. If you look at when you're talking about productivity and wage income, right? Median buying power has actually gone down since the 70s. See, it shows that wages are still going up, but this is just in nominal wages. So the dollar amount getting paid, because of inflation and because the price of goods have been going up, median like income or median wages are going down for the, you know, or wages are going down for median income people. And this, I think, is like a class problem, and I think that this is what Oliver Anthony's talking about in this song, or I think that this is a good faith interpretation. Now, I haven't seen his other stuff. It's perhaps true that he has some things that would be regarded as problematic by the left, but I think it's a reach to call this a sort of dog whistle for race.
Richmond, north of Richmond.
Okay, so this is the other line that might be considered dog whistle. We'll hear it all throughout. But I think that Richmond, north of Richmond creates this, well, I think north versus south idea in the immediate person. But I think there's two things, or a few things, at least two, to keep in mind. First of all, the line slaps, right? The Richmond, north of Richmond just sounds tremendously good, like in terms of just like how it sounds. And so, you know, if you can think of a pairing like wealthy men, rich men, politicians, like that sounds nice, then go for it. But it's not necessarily a north versus south thing. If you look at Richmond, Virginia on the map, and then look where is directly north of it, it's Washington, D.C. He's talking about politicians later in this song. I think a fair interpretation is that he's talking about politicians. Now, maybe he's talking about it like as a north versus south thing, and this is, I also think, not necessarily problematic, because I think that whatever cultural problems you have that are like relative to your own situation, like I think it's fair for people in Middle America or people from the South to organize themselves under geographic like kind of conceptions, so that they can talk about the struggle particular to them. Like a lot of people who are from Middle America, this is a population map, feel that their voice is not very well heard and feel that they're ignored by society writ large. To some extent, I think that's fair. I don't think that they're heard or it's a larger part of the social, like, milieu or whatever. But to another extent, I think that people in Middle America need to recognize that on relative to the size of their population, that representation might not be unfair. There's way more people in coastal cities and this sort of thing, and there's like way more media coverage of like these coastal cities, and so is it proportional is more the question than is it should it be 50-50 coverage between Middle America and coastal cities? No, because most of Americans live on the coast, right? And I think that when Middle America complains about them being, ignored, it's not necessarily a fair complaint. Let's continue.
Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do.
I think this is not correct. I think that, generally speaking, the rich people and the politicians don't care what you think or what you do, and that there's no big brother type of thing.
And they don't think you know, but I know that you do, 'cause your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end, 'cause the rich men, 'cause the rich men.
That line slaps.
I wish politicians.
So he invokes Richmond, north of Richmond, and the next group that he actually talks about is politicians, right? Not some sort of North versus South Confederate sort of thing. He immediately talks about politicians in Washington, D.C., directly north of Richmond.
Look out for miners, not just miners on an island somewhere. Lord, we got folks in the street, ain't got nothing to eat, and the whole beast milking welfare.
So this is something that I think that people on the coast do not fully appreciate, is that, first of all, there's like a hollowing out of middle America that's happened over the last 20, 30 years, as an enormous amount of jobs have just been turned over by automation, and there's this mass creation of ghost cities, ghost towns. Also, there's an enormous brain drain. A lot of people who do really well academically move to the coast and they never move back, right? And so there is this enormous problem in middle America where, there's just not enough economic activity going. And then secondly, on that tail end, when he's talking about the people eating ho-hos or whatever, a lot of people have been like, oh, you're fat phobic or something like this, and it's the amount of people who get on welfare in middle America is disproportionately larger, and there are lawyers specifically for getting on this welfare. And a lot of people just milk it because what it does is once you get on it, it's very hard to, if you ever get employed, you lose your disability. If you ever get on disability for like some basis, generally psychological, but also like back pain, whatever, something like this. And so it disincentivizes people from trying to get back in the work pool, because once you get it, you lose it, and you lawyer up to get it, you do this type of thing, and it creates these like hollowed out, I'm not meaning to be overly aggressive here, but it creates a subset of people who are disincentivized from working, and also work is generally a source of meaning, so they're probably they're also disconnected from a sense of meaning as a result of this. And so I think that people on the coast are not fully aware or cognizant of this like hollowing out effect that is particularly the case in like lots of middle America places where so many of the jobs have been replaced by automation.
God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. Young men are putting
That's the line some people have a problem with.
themselves 6 feet in the ground, 'cause all this damn country does is keep on kicking them down. Lord, it's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is.
There's kind of a rumbling that this song is going to be really popular at election rallies and this type of thing in the upcoming Republican primaries. I'm curious to see it. I think the song sounds relatively good. I'm not generally a fan of country though, so it's not going to be hitting my playlist, but not because I think it's politically inflammatory or dog whistling.
Living in the new world with an whole soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think, wanna know what you do.
Again, I think that empiric, I think that this is just incorrect, that they care so much about this. I think that this big brother narrative that's common amongst conservatives is just not really, people care, they care about the bottom line is what the Richmond, north of Richmond care about, I think, more so than this idea of control of the general populace. I think that it's easier to ascribe greed than some sort of pernicious maliciousness.
And they don't think you know, but I know that you do, 'cause your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end, 'cause the rich men, north of Richmond.
Acoustics are
I've
lovely.
been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay.
And I think that's it. Yeah, so to me it seems more like, I think that anyone who thinks that this is like racially charged or something like this is not giving this guy a fair sort of interpretation or something like this. There's this notion of steel manning the other, or giving them kind of the best representation of what they're saying, or the reversal of a straw man. So a straw man argument is where you hold something up and you give the worst possible interpretation. And so, like, for example, if you're saying the rich men north of Richmond and you want to make the straw man example of it, you say that, hey, this is a dog whistle for the Confederacy, right? But if you want to give a steelman argument, he complains specifically about politicians, right? Where are the politicians geographically? They're north of Richmond, right? Now, you could say that this is some sort of like, dog whistle for a Dixie or whatever, but I don't think that this is a generous interpretation of what he's saying. Also, almost all of his complaints, right? I didn't see any complaint that seems to be particularly about race, but I saw a ton that were about class. I think that this is a song about class struggle, and I'm inclined to agree that there is a problem. I think that this line, I think the correlation between increased productivity and increased hourly compensation, I think that line should be, the correlation between these two lines should be really tight. And it was really tight from 50 to 70, 1950s to 1970s. And when people are like, talk about the good old days and they're talking about this, I think a fair interpretation of what they're talking about is this. I think the unfair interpretation is, or which interpretation is accurate is like a different story, but I'm saying if you want to interpret it in a positive way, you're talking about this class idea. If you want to interpret it in a negative way and say that it's a dog whistle, you talk about how this was before civil rights, something like this, right? But I think that, this is something that you have to be trying to, like, I think it's important to be able to bifurcate and actually make both interpretations alongside themselves and then ask yourself, which one is it, right? And so, like, the question is like, you can be aware that this could be a dog whistle, and then you could be aware that it could be just like a real legitimate like complaint about class struggle, and then you can make your interpretation of what you think it is. The fact that middle Americans are just being eroded, and middle income is just it just has a trajectory towards lower income, and upper income is just going to have a larger share of the pie. And the question is like, is this what meritocracy looks like? I don't think it is. I think there is increased leverage and oligopic power, specifically with the rich elite, and that this is allowing them to get more than their meritocratic share. I don't mean fair share in the sense that everyone should have access to XYZ good or service. I mean, everyone should have their fair share, and that the value of their labor should be what they get paid. And I think that this is a trending line that might be indicating that that's not happening. And I think that the Oliver Anthony song is like a fine, I mean, it's definitely got, it's a country song, it's got that twang, it definitely like sounds conservative, this sort of thing. And so it's like not my cup of tea, but it definitely is in alignment with a lot of things that I think. Anyways, let me know what you think of either the song or my ideas down below. If you like this, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube algorithm stuff. And other than that, have a good day.